Think you know all there is to know about the edge? Well, with so many different projects and groups focused on various aspects of edge and edge computing, it's often daunting trying to tie it all together. Beth, thanks for joining us again on TelecomTV. As I say, there's a lot of activity ongoing around the edge, and there has been for a couple of years now. What is the OpenStack Foundation working on with regards to the edge?
Well, there's a lot of activity going on, and as you know, I was actually quite surprised to find, here at the summit that there's still a huge amount of education that needs to be done around the edge. But the foundation has been supporting edge computing. We have an entire 20 sessions devoted to nothing but the edge. There's the Edge Working Group, which I've been part of for the last 2 years, has been feverishly working away at identifying use cases, which I have actually recently found were used for some of the other projects. So ONAP is using some of our use cases that we've defined, which is fantastic. And also the work we've done to establish those use cases is now moving into being used within the OpenStack portfolio for adding edge support in some of the components. So, for example, there's work with Keystone and Glance and Nova to bring edge, into it.
It's good to see that there is harmonization, and the results of one project can be used to further another project.
Absolutely, that's what open source is all about. So I'm very excited about that.
So what were delegates here at the OpenStack Summit in Berlin? What did they discover from the work that's been going on?
Some of the work is, there's been sort of contention around, is containers versus VMs and maybe microcode or micro serverlets, and so what we're finding, of course, is that it's all. It's not either or, it's everything. And that containers have their place, and VMs have their place, and serverlets have their places, and serverless has its place. And it really depends upon the use case. And that's what you need to drill down. It's the devil's in the details.
Are we still looking at documenting potential use cases, or have we kind of moved on from that?
Nope, we're still working on use cases. We have about 20 identified to date. They do need to be fleshed out more, so people that are interested in the edge, absolutely should contribute. I was heartened by one of the people in the audience yesterday. Was he IM'd me afterward and said, "Yes, I am going to join the user group," and he's a vendor, so very exciting.
So when you identify specific use cases, and you provide more detail and you flesh them out, what then? What does that achieve, and what does that help the community do?
Well, so part of what we do when we identify these use cases is we identify what components of OpenStack will be affected and how they'll be affected. So we can then go to that group and say, we would like to add these features into that component.
So this all furthers into the ongoing release and the update of OpenStack itself?
Exactly, right.
Right. And is this all kind of furthering maybe one of the reasons why the OpenStack Foundation is kind of shifting an emphasis towards open infrastructure?
It perfectly fits into it, because if you think about it, OpenStack was originally conceived as sort of a very data center focused project. It really was, sort of an alternative to some of the public cloud offerings that were proprietary. And it has since grown past that. And the edge, I think, was really the component that really made the foundation realize that it was opening up to embrace other open source, and it melds very nicely with the other open source projects, because now it's the infrastructure underneath, because none of the other projects are working and focusing on the infrastructure. So it's a nice way of completing the circle, so to speak.
Now, you've also been presenting here at the summit from Verizon's perspective, and Verizon's experience on remote compute node deployments and some of the issues there. And as I understand it, Verizon's been deploying UCPE in maybe harsher environments or more challenging environments. What were the lessons that have come out of this, and how does this all then feed back into the community?
So Verizon has been at it for about 2.5 years. So we've had a product, the Virtual Network Services product, and available, and so we have quite a bit of experience with deploying universal CPEs and service chains and network services at the edge at this point. So we, our lessons are, you got to watch the details. Delivering to, as I said on the panel, to the North Pole is pretty difficult. and if you have to service and get that box out there and get it up and running, you have to really understand that whole service chain and make sure that it gets delivered, maybe by Santa's elves. And then they can plug it in and magically get it working using automation. So that's what we have been working on and perfecting over the last 2 years.
So these are remote locations, but you still need support, and sometimes that could be global support.
It has to be global support, right? It's not always Verizon, Verizon techs with a truck. We have to work with other groups, and again, those are logistic challenges.
Final question for you. You've been to a number of OpenStack summits like this. Has the message of the edge and the potential of the edge, you say there's still a lot of people here wanting to learn more and understand more, but are we there yet in thinking the edge is now accepted as this very, very important part of the overall infrastructure?
Yes and no. I think the message is getting out, but I think there's still a lot of people who still think of the edge as 5G.
Okay.
And really the edge is, 5G is just currently the best business case because it's the best way to roll out 5G, but the edge is just starting those other business cases. So Internet of Things, manufacturing, smart cities, augmented reality, gaming, it all needs the internet. And 5G is the platform, but yes, it's coming, and so that's an ongoing education process at this point.
Great. Well, for now, Beth, thanks very much for joining us again on TelecomTV.
Thank you.